Yudalit Amid Beis Mitzayra Maush Yanik Tzarate Beregal. I think that's where we're holding. The bottom of the page. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn. This chus of our learning. Should have the base of Migdash immediately. And the Refuah Shlema. For Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah, Aaron David Alevi ben Minucha de Lester, Abraham Rafal ben Sarah, Asher Anshel, Alevi ben Miriam Adel, and Sarah Basnuni. So in my Gemara, it's 9 lines from the bottom. Good morning. We're asking about a leper. Does he have to follow the laws of the leper? He's tummy, of course, that we're not questioning. But does he have to, as we're going to see, all the halachas, does he have to keep them over the holiday? Have to stay outside the camp and cover his face and be separated from people, all of that over the holiday, because the holiday's coming. Does the holiday push it off? When it came to Avelos, mourning, the holiday pushes off the mourning. Whether it was mourning before, or whether the mourning falls on or whether someone passed away on the holiday takes over. So what happens to the Mitzayra? Amar Abaya Tashma. Abaya says, come and listen. It says, V'nazir v'mitzayra mitmasal tarasi. Really, ha'oila mitmasal tarasi. The Mishnah tells us who's allowed to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed. Someone that was a Mitzayra that's becoming pure. He's allowed to take his haircut. Why? Because he couldn't have taken it beforehand. So the Gemara understands that it's the holiday that's allowing him to take the haircut. Habi made to Masai. No, it's not the holiday. The Gemara's understanding that it's only because he's becoming pure that he's allowed to take the haircut. But if he would still be impure, so then he wouldn't be allowed to take the haircut. That means Habi meit masinag. That means that the laws of leprosy apply even on the holiday. Gemara says, how do you know? Maybe it's saying something else. Gemara is saying like this. Really, the holiday comes around, the Mitzayra doesn't have to keep the laws. It's the holiday, takes over. So why are you telling me that when he's becoming pure, he doesn't have to keep the laws? He's allowed to take his haircut? He was always allowed to take his haircut if it becomes the holiday. Why are you telling me only when it becomes pure? So it's saying like this. When he's becoming pure, there's another law that he needs to follow, and that is that he has to bring sacrifices. So I could have understood that because he has to bring his sacrifices, maybe we shouldn't have him take his haircut yet, because the sacrifices are going to go along with the haircut. And after he gets the haircut, he brings the sacrifices. So I could have thought that he may delay the sacrifices to a specific time. There's 2 versions of this. But this, in other words, when he's becoming pure, I could have had a reason to say that maybe he should not take his haircut. Because of the sacrifices that would come along with it, that may get delayed, and a person shouldn't delay those sacrifices. Kamash Malan, that no, we let the Mitzayra that's becoming pure take his haircut on Chol Hamoed. Okay. So we still don't have an answer. What about a Mitzayra that's impure? Could be that he is allowed to take a haircut also. It could be that he's not allowed to. We don't really have a proof for that. Amarava Tashema. So Rava does have a proof. Rava says the following. Again, we're looking at if the laws of the Mitzayra get overruled by the holiday. It says like this. V'hatzarua, pasuk says, and the leper. That those extra letters there, and the leper, l'rabis kain gadol. It's coming to include that a kain gadol could also become a metzora. It could become a leper if he gets tzaras. The rules would apply to him. Okay, now if that's the case, I mean, big deal, right? So far, doesn't tell me anything. But if that's the case, then v'kain gadol kol hashana k'regel kol al madami. A kain gadol, the whole year is a holiday. Yeah. How do we prove this? Titanan, we have a Mishnah. Kain gadol makravainen ve'ina eichel. Shmamina neitzrat regel shmamina. The kain gadol, the whole year is a holiday. Why? Because usually if a person is in a state of mourning, he's not allowed to bring the sacrifices. A kain, that's mourning. He's not allowed to bring the sacrifice. But a kain gadol does bring the sacrifices. Why? Because the kain gadol the whole year is like a holiday, and a holiday pushes off the mourning. So a kain gadol is always in a state of a holiday. But nevertheless, we have a pasuk that says that a kain gadol could become a leper. Aha! That means the rules of a leper apply to a holiday. Even though it's on a holiday, there still could be leprosy. Those halachas. Because it applies to a kain gadol who's always in a state of a holiday. Yeah. Shema mina. Okay. So we know that the laws of tzaras apply even on the holiday. I had a friend, a South American guy. So he said, I would love to become Lubavitch, but my father won't let me. I said, why do you want to be Lubavitch? So he says, on Lubavitch, it's Purim every day. Okay. That's what his view was. Okay. I guess the Fabrengens and everything, and excitement. So the kain gadol always has a holiday. Avel, now we have another halacha. What's happening over here? We're going to go through the halachas of Avelis. There's about 12 halachas. Yeah, a bunch of halachas of Avelis. What are those halachas? That he's not allowed to take a haircut. He's supposed to wrap his head. He's can't wear tefillin. He's not supposed to say hello. He's not allowed to study Torah. Can't do laundry. He's to tear his clothes, turn over his bed. Can't do work. Can't bathe, and he can't wear shoes. It's basic. Those are the basic halachas of mourning.
They need to stay at home.
Yeah. Yeah. In a psychology magazine, they wrote about the benefits of Avelis. A secular magazine, but they've said that the Jewish tradition, it's very helpful for someone that's mourning to go through that process. They spelled it out, like how each step is something beneficial for the. Anyway, someone wrote a letter to the editor that he practiced Avelis. He didn't feel that it helped him at all. So it gets a letter back, like, tell me what you did. Or it was maybe a phone call. They wanted to hear more about this. So did you go to work? So of course I went to work. Did you bathe? He said, of course I bathed. Did you shave? He said, of course I shaved. So did you sit on a low stool? Did people come over? He says, no. I wore a black ribbon. They put on a black ribbon. Anyway, he said, I don't feel it helps me much. Okay. So Aval also bit dispersed. The first halach. The mourner is not allowed to take a haircut. How do we know this? And because the Eibishter says to the sons of Aaron that were remaining after the two brothers passed away, don't let your hair grow. I mean, that meant that they had a special halacha. Normally, an Aval is supposed to let his hair grow. They had a special halacha. That tells me that normally, in a state of mourning, you're supposed to let your hair grow. Okay, what the Gemara is going to do here is it's going to tell me the halachas that we know about Avelis, and then it's going to ask me, what about someone that's in cherem, a menuda, and excommunicated, ostracized, and the Mitzayra, do they have the same halachas as an Aval? So on top of Daf Tesvav. Menudim and Mitzayra and Mahin b'Tesperis. What about them? Are they allowed to take a haircut? Someone that's ostracized because he didn't show up in court, probably. And a leper, are they allowed to take a haircut? Tashma. So it says, we quote our Mishnah, Menudim and Mitzayra and Asur l'Sapra l'Chapis. That a Menudim and a Mitzayra are not allowed to, it's not our Mishnah actually, are not allowed to take a haircut and to do laundry. Very clear. No question remaining. Menuda Shemes, we finish off what we quoted, even though it's not, we already have our answer. What happens if someone dies while he's in cherem? What do? So Bezdin Seiklin Esareinai, the Bezdin stones the coffin. It doesn't actually mean they throw stones on it, but we'll see. Rabbi Yudai Malaysia Yamadal of Galavanim Kagale Shalachen. Ela Bezdin Shalchan Aminichan Evan Gedela Alareinai. It's not that they put a heap of stones on top of it like they did to Achan. You know what Achan was? Achan was the fellow that took from the spoils of Yerichai. After they destroyed Yerichai, and Jericho on the way into the land of Israel, so Yeshua made a decree: no one's allowed to take from the spoils. And then they fought another battle, and they lost the next battle. And they asked Hashem what happened. It says that the Jewish people sinned. What was the sin? Someone had taken something from the spoils, and they drew lots, and it turned out that it was this fellow Achan. So he was killed, and I don't know if his family was killed. I don't remember, Daniel.
It's a different shatim from the commentaries.
Uh-huh.
I think the main one is that they weren't.
That they were not.
They were not, yeah.
And
then,
then,
David, I think, yeah.
I'm sorry?
I think the Mesidas David says that, yes, that they were killed too. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So then they put a heap of stones on his grave over the body, I guess. So this is not done to a menuda. They put one stone as they're carrying the coffin. They put one stone on it. And this teaches you it's sort of like the token stoning. They put it on. Symbolizes that he's being stoned. Okay, this just comes in because we're finishing the brisa. Avel chayev batifas hareish. We have another halacha. An avel is supposed to wrap his head. Yeah, we don't do this today. And I saw the commentary say, yeah, in my other Gemara I have a collection of Rishonim, and they said that we don't do it. It was Hagoyis Maimonides they quoted that the Goyim would laugh at us, something like that, if we would wrap like this. Yeah, I think that in the Muslim countries, I think it would go fine to wrap the head, cover most of the face except for the eyes. But I guess in Europe it stopped. So Aval Chaya Batifas Reish Midakamale Rachmanali Yecheskel V'Leisata Al Safam. Yecheskel was mourning, and Hashem tells him, "Don't cover your Safam," is like the lips, the mustache. Mechlal de Kol Yam Mechayvi. That means that in a normal case you would have to be wrapped up in a state of mourning. What's going to happen over here is that as we quote from, as we did before, we quoted the story of the brothers of the sons of Aaron, and Hashem tells them what to do, and we say, oh, that because a mourner would not be doing that, then they have to do this. Or we quote Yecheskel, and Hashem tells Yecheskel what to do. We say that means that a mourner was really supposed to be doing different. Hashem has to tell him not. So it always comes out the opposite. what Hashem is saying to them is because really a mourner was supposed to do differently. Hashem is telling them, don't act like a mourner. So here, don't cover the mouth. Why? Why does you have to say that? Because really, if he's mourning, he should be covering the mouth. That tells me that a mourner has to cover the mouth. Now we follow along in the same pattern. If we know the halacha by an avel, what about by someone that's ostracized? Amar Rav Yosef Tashma. Come and listen. We had in Masechtas Tainus that after the fast, they had a bunch of fasts for rain to come. If the rain doesn't come, they would sit there and like they're ostracized and like they're in mourning until Hashem has compassion on them to bring the rain. So you see, a menuda, someone that's ostracized, someone that's excommunicated, so he has to wear this wrap around his head. That's what it says by the fast. It's as if they're ostracized from heaven. Amalei Abaya says to his teacher, Rabbi Yosef, that quoted this, Dilma menuda l'shamayim shani dechamer. This was God didn't bring the rain. They must have done something wrong. They're being ostracized from God. So they have to wear this wrap around their head. Maybe that's much worse than being ostracized from the court. How do you know that a regular person that's ostracized needs to wear the wrap? Maybe this is just someone that's ostracized from heaven. No answer. What about a leper? Should he have his head wrapped? Tashma, Balsafam Yata. It says, it's clear in the pasuk that he should wrap. That's very clear. It says mamish in the pasuk that a mitzvah is supposed to wrap. Another halacha. Novel doesn't wear tefillin. If he's in mourning, he doesn't wear tefillin. Yeah. We do this just the first day. And in Chabad, I think they sneak it on anyway. But the halacha is that he wouldn't wear it on the first day. Hashem tells Yechezkel, you should bind your crown on you. You should wear tefillin. Mechlal, that implies the Koli Almasa, that anyone else that was mourning would not be wearing tefillin. Right? We learned that everything is the opposite. Menuda ma'al b'tefillin, but what about someone that's ostracized? He didn't show up in court. They called him a few times. They say, okay, you don't show up, you're going to be in chayrim. Should he now wear tefillin? Teku? Don't have an answer. Period. Because he's like in a state of mourning. People aren't supposed to associate with him, and he has to behave as a mourner. He's not paying attention to the law because he doesn't want to pay this fellow money, but he's probably a religious guy. It's common. It doesn't mean he doesn't keep halacha because he doesn't want to pay someone money. The Bezdin called him to court. They called him several times. He doesn't show up. He gets put in chayrim. Yeah, but in every other area he does obey Bezdin. Yeah, this is a common thing.
Question.
Yeah.
Aside from the external fact that both the Menuda and the Mitzvah are sort of separated from the community, is there some deeper connection between the two inyanim?
That they should be in a state of mourning.
So that we're comparing them.
Right.
I see the external.
Yeah. Reb Daniel, what do you say?
Well, the social isolation, right? They both have to be isolated from society.
They both have to what?
Be isolated in some way.
Isolated. But the Menuda can get out of it at any moment.
Right.
Right. Say, okay, I'll do whatever I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Interesting.
Mitzvah theoretically could also, when he does tshuva. I mean, that was the idea of it, but if it actually works like that, if it works that a person did Avera gets Tzaras, it's sort of like a type of prophecy. like a direct, immediate consequence. By Miriam, right? She spoke to Raskam. Okay, Mitzayra Mao b'tfilin. Does a Mitzayra wear tefillin? Tashema, it says Vahatzarua. Remember this Gemara? We had it a few minutes ago. The Rabbi's Kain Gadol. This is including the Kain Gadol, that the Kain Gadol could become a Mitzayra. Okay. Before we quoted it to tell me that a Mitzayra, the rules of Mitzayra apply on the holiday, because the Kain Gadol is always in a state of the regal of the holiday. The God of Yiofarumim, his clothing should be torn. Shiu Mikurayim, his clothing should be torn. Reisha Yia Parua, and his hair should grow. Should grow. Shouldn't cut his hair. Ein Priya Gidl Sar. That means that his hair should grow. So we're talking about the Kain Gadol that becomes a Mitzayra, has torn clothing and his hair is growing. Div Rabbi Eliezer. This is what Rabbi Eliezer holds. Rabbi Akiva Aimer, Nemra Havaya Bareish v'Nemra Havaya Bebeged. It says, if you look at that pasuk, it says, his head should be, his clothing should be, or will be. That yiyu is a comparison, his clothing to his hair. Ma havaya amur bebeged, just like when it's talking about the clothing, davar shechutz migufay, afavaya breish davar shechutz migufay. Also, it's not talking about growing the hair, it's talking about that he should not wear tefillin. My love, a tefillin must be talking about something separated from him that he's not going to do, that he doesn't wear tefillin. Just like the clothing is torn, also over here, parua, instead of meaning growing locks, param is to grow locks, it also means to be exposed. His head should be exposed, it means it shouldn't be covered with tefillin. That's the way it's being translated by Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer doesn't have this at all. According to Rabbi Eliezer, he wears tefillin. There's no shaila. Shaila is, what does Rabbi Akiva hold? Rav Papa says it's not a good proof. Loi, ukmis akumta v'sudra. Akumta v'sudra. It's talking about a cap and a scarf. How do you know it's talking about tefillin? It says that his head should be exposed. Yeah, before we said that he has to cover his head. Maybe it's the mouth and the forehead. And this would be the upper part of the top. Okay. Avel Asr B'Shila Shalom. We have a new halacha. Here we're talking about greeting someone. Don't greet, the mourner doesn't greet someone, and also you're not supposed to greet the mourner.
The grave.
At the grave and also in the house. Yeah. Oh, that's a never. It's common that there's men and women at the cemetery together because of the burial. But so there's always that extra warning. But so Aval Asr B'Shila Shalom. He's not allowed to greet someone. The Kamalei Rachman Ali Yecheskel, Hiyanik Daim. Hiyanik means to sigh, and Daim means silent. Yeah, this is a problematic source. Because it messes up the whole pattern. The pattern here was that whenever Hashem tells Yecheskel something, we always understood that it's really the opposite for everyone else. And here we have a source that it's exactly the same. It says you should be silent, sigh in silence. And we say, oh, that means that you can't greet someone. But I thought we said that he's supposed to be doing everything different then. Anyway, the commentaries discuss this. But that's the source, that you don't have greetings to them. The mourner doesn't greet, and we don't greet the mourner. What about someone that's ostracized? Is he allowed to greet? To say Shalom Aleichem. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef has a source. He says Tashma u'b'shila shalom shminanam lachaveir k'mani adam anazufin lamakim. This is referring to also the fast days. That if the rain doesn't come, So they refrain from greeting each other as if they've been ostracized from Hashem. That means that they don't greet. Why? Because they're ostracized. That means that someone that's ostracized doesn't say Shalom Aleichem. Amalei Abaya says, how do you know that's a good source? There's a big difference. We're not talking about being ostracized because of the court. We're talking about being ostracized from heaven because of the didn't rain. Dilma, it's Abaya's claim what he did before as well. Dilma menudel hashemayim shani dechamer. Maybe over there it's more stricter because they're trying to get rain. It's not coming. Obviously, Hashem is upset with them. So that's why they have to stop greeting. But maybe a regular person that's ostracized because he didn't come to court. So maybe he's allowed to greet others. We don't have an answer for the menuda, for the one that's ostracized. What about a leper? Is he allowed to greet? That he covers his mouth. It's very clear. It says he covers his mouth, his lips should be closed, just like someone that's ostracized. That's a problem. Because we just said we don't have any answer for that. We'll see it in a moment. And like a mourner, and he's not allowed to greet anyone. The Gemara says okay, Shema Mina, we see that's a proof that a leper doesn't greet people. Let's go back. You said that he's like someone that's ostracized. And we didn't know the answer is someone that's ostracized. But if the leper is like ostracized, and the leper doesn't greet anyone, so too the menuda, the one that's ostracized, doesn't greet anyone, because you just did a comparison. Amar Rav Acha bar Pinchas Mishmei Rav Yosef. Rav Acha bar Pinchas says the name of Rav Yosef Miktani She'aser She'ek Menuda Ka'aval Ktani B'Mili Achronaisa V'Aser Nami B'Shila Shalom. You have to read this carefully. He's saying, we're saying that they're like a someone that's ostracized and like a mourner, and he's not allowed to greet anyone. But the comparison that he's like someone that's ostracized and like a mourner is not associated with the greeting someone. That's another thing. He's like someone that's ostracized and like mourning. And by the way, he's also not allowed to greet anyone. Doesn't mean that the ostracized and mourner, that it's connected to that. The mourner we know from other sources, but it doesn't mean that that's the comparison. That's not the comparison. There is a comparison, but it doesn't have to do with the greeting. That's what the Rav Acha bar Pinchas is saying. Okay. The next halach is aval aser b'divrei Torah. A mourner is not allowed to study Torah. Mida kamar Rachman al Yecheskel doim, because the Eibishter told Yecheskel be silent, and Torah is learned by speaking. Yeah, or hearing someone speak. We'll see. There are certain things. Actually, yeah, you're not allowed to study Torah except for this page. Except for Moed Kattan, you're allowed to study. You're allowed to study these laws. And the other things. I don't know about the Psalms. Maybe certain Psalms. But what about someone that's ostracized? Is he allowed to study Torah? It's a good question. Rav Yosef says, Tashma, Menuda, we have a source. It says like this. Someone that's ostracized, Shaina, he studies, Shainin Lai, and actually someone can study for him, like to him, can read or recite things in front of him so he could learn. Niskar, he's actually allowed to work. He gets hired out. Niskar in Lai, and he can also hire workers to work for him. Muhram is another stage. There's several stages to being ostracized. There's ostracized and excommunicated. I threw them all together. But the truth is that there's levels. The more severe level is called muhram. He's not allowed to study. You're not allowed to study for him, like to teach him. And he's not allowed to work, and he's not allowed to hire workers. He can study alone. He can't study for others. He can't teach others. He can study alone. He shouldn't interrupt his study. We don't want him to forget and to not study at all. What does he do? How does he survive if he's excommunicated? How does he survive? So he says he can make a little store. Rav says, Zvuni Maya bepaksa the arvas. What type of store does he make? What type of work does he do? He makes a store that sells water, like a kiosk, and in the valley of Arvas. Yeah. You know, at the when you're getting off the exits, there's someone over there selling water bottles. So that's what he can do. He can sell water in this place where there's no water. He brings it in over there, he slaps it down and sells to people that need water. Yeah. Okay, so we had the Aval is not allowed to study Torah, but we do have an answer that a Menuda is allowed to, someone that's in Chayrim is yes allowed to study Torah. Mitzayra ma with the Brit Torah. What about the Mitzayra? Does the leper study Torah? So Tashema, come and listen. Should make known to your sons and grandchildren the day that you stood before Hashem at Chayrim, which means let them know about the giving of the Torah. Just like over there, it was with awe and fear and trembling. Mikan Amru, from this they taught that Hazavin v'Ametzirayin u'Bailei Nidus Mutarin Likris B'Tern V'Yam Ksuvim V'Lishnes B'Medrash B'Shas B'Alachas V'Agadas. Someone that's Tamei does not mean that he's not serious enough to study Torah. We're on 15, 15a towards the bottom. Tesvav Amadala. Just because he's Tamei doesn't mean that he doesn't have the mindset to study Torah. It was either Bailey Nidus means that he lived with a woman that was a Nida, that he gets the Tumah, but it doesn't mean that it was that he's not in the right mindset. Whatever he did, maybe it was a mistake. He's allowed to study Torah. Azav and Mitzayra, they're allowed to study all the parts of the Torah. Balkari, someone that had an emission, that's Asurin. He's not allowed to, because his obviously his mind is somewhere else, and he shouldn't be studying Torah in that state of mind. Oval, yeah, I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
heard from the Alter Rebbe, I think, Liquid Torah, says Zot Torah Mitzvah B'Yom Taharato, means that the Torah is what makes him tahor. That's exactly his cure, is the Torah.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful, very nice. Very nice. That the studying of the Torah is what purifies it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Aval Aser B'Tachbaises. So far, we have an answer for studying Torah for both things. A Menuda studies Torah, someone that's ostracized, and also a Mitzayra studies Torah. We didn't have answers for everything. You know, we know the laws of mourning, but the question is those two other things, those two other scenarios. How does it apply to that? That we didn't always have a conclusion. We had some tekus before. A mourner is not allowed to do laundry. He's not allowed to wear freshly laundered clothes. The ksiv. Yishlach Yoav to Koyav Yikach Misham Isha Chachama, Yimrila Sablina, Belivshina, Big Day Ovel, Alta Suchi Shemer, Visakisha Zayam Rab, Misabella Salmes. Yeah, this was, I think, what happened over there. David's Amnon lived with Tamar. He raped Tamar, and then Tamar's brother Avshalom kills Amnon, and David is upset with Avshalom, and Avshalom runs away, and he's afraid of what. Daniel, what happened? He killed not only Amnon, but he killed the other siblings as well, I think. Then he runs. Then Yoav has this whole tactic to get Avshalom back, and so he has this woman mourn, and then she comes in front of the king, and she says that one child killed another, and I wanted some like whole story over there in order to that David should realize that he should forgive Avshalom and let him come back. So what he tells this woman is that how to mourn. He says, put on the clothing of Avel, don't put on of mourning, don't put oil on. You should be in mourning for as if you're mourning for it's all a fake, it's all a show for what she's about to do and what she's about to tell David.
And then David catches on, right? He figures out that Yoav put her up to this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So what do we see from this? That she should wear clothing of a mourner. In other words, she shouldn't wash her clothes. What about those other two? The ostracized and the mitzvah, are they allowed to wear freshly laundered clothes? So Tashema, we have a direct source. They're not allowed to. Not allowed to take a haircut, not allowed to wear freshly laundered clothes. Aval chayev b'kriya. An aval has to tear his clothes. Where do we see this? Because it's from the opposite. The sons of Aaron passed away. Hashem tells the others, don't tear your clothing. That means that in normal situation, they would be tearing their clothing. This was a special situation. They were kayanim. They shouldn't tear the clothing because of the work in the temple. But normally they would. What about someone that's ostracized? Should he tear his clothes? Teiku. We don't have an answer. I forget the Gemara. There was the Gemara in Bava Metzia when Rabbi Akiva goes to Rabbi Eliezer because Rabbi Eliezer was put in Cherem. So he tells him, "Chaverim b'delim emcha." Your colleagues have separated themselves from you. So he sits down, and I think it says he tears his clothes. I forget if it says that, but it says he acted as like a mourner would do, like what we're learning here. Mitzayra ma'u b'kriya. What is that? Yeah. Why didn't he comply? Yeah. Mitzayra ma'u b'kriya. What about a mitzayra? Does he tear his clothes? Tashema says begad of Yefruman. It says clearly that he tears his clothes. Okay, we have an answer. Okay, so we're left with the question by the ostracized. Aval chaya b'kviyas amita. Sorry. Yeah, Aval has to turn over the bed. We don't do this today. I'm not sure if it's because we make the beds differently, the different type of beds, or somehow it went out of style. So, but they would turn over the bed and sleep on the other side. It would be more uncomfortable. Yeah, on Tisha B'Av, I think we take away a pillow or something, but to turn over the whole bed. The Tani Bar Kapara, where it was, see this from? Bar Kapara taught, the yukni nasati behem. I put my image in them. That means in creating man, ba'venisayim, and in their sins, hafachtia. They turned it over. Kaful mitesayim ala. Turn over the beds on it. I guess in morning you turn over the bed. This is a brisa. It's not a pasuk. It's not really telling me like what the source is before the brisa. We're with the whole thing. Well, actually, we were satisfied usually with the brisa. Yeah. Okay. What about the leper and the ostracized? Did they turn over the bed? The Gemara says teiku. We don't have an answer for that. Whenever we have a teiku, we have a rule in Hilchos Avelos that you're always lenient. Whenever there's a suffix or whenever there's a machlekes, you always do the lenient opinion. That's the rule in halacha. It's not just in the halacha it says that you do the more lenient views.
Rabbi, what were their beds made out of? What that they could turn it over? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a frame with rope.
Uh-huh.
That's what and then they would sleep on the other side, meant with the legs sticking up or something.
So that low, because if the feet is sticking up,
Yeah.
it's not high, like a mourner sits on.
Yeah, Dr. Stein is saying that the bed would be lower.
Mhm.
Yeah, like the mourner's chair. Aval aser basiyas malacha, a mourner is not allowed to go to work. I've turned over your holidays to mourning. Now, what does that mean? The comparison there is that both of them you're not allowed to work. But I've turned the not working of the holiday into a not working of mourning. What about, this is the pattern of this Gemara, is it tells me the halacha by Avelis, and then it asks the question, what about someone that's ostracized and what about Saras? So we go to someone that's ostracized. What about him? Is he allowed to work? Amar Rav Yosef Tashema, Kisha Amru Asr Basiyas Malach Le'amar Ala Bayayim Aval Balayla Mutter. Bechinat Amaitzi B'Menuda V'Aval. Yeah, we're talking about the fast days. They were fasting because of rain, and it didn't rain. So it says that they would, or on the fast days itself, they would not do work. And that was only by day, but in the evening they would do work. And then the same thing we find by a menuda, by someone that's ostracized, and by a mourner. Aha, my love akulu must be referring to everything. That means that a menuda doesn't do work. It says la yashara. It's talking about the other things. You see, we did this before once. We tried to make a comparison because it says that they sit, those people after the fast and they're not answered, they sit there as if they're mourning and as if they're ostracized. Aha. So does that mean every single detail or does that mean the general mood? So the Gemara tries to say, oh, it's every detail, including that they're not allowed to do work. The Gemara says, no, it's talking about the other things that the head's supposed to be wrapped. There's other things that it's not a proof that every single detail is the same halacha. Tashema, we're still looking for doing work by someone that's ostracized. So we have a clear source. It says, Menuda shaina v'shainin light. He's allowed to learn or teach, and he's allowed to have others teach him. Niskar, he can get hired out for work, but Niskar and light can hire others. Shema Mina, it's very clear he's allowed to do work. Okay, we have an answer. Mitzayra ma'al basiyas malacha. What about a leper? Is he allowed to do work? Teku, we don't have an answer for that. Yeah. Yeah, work remotely, yeah. That's right. Right. A mourner is not allowed to shower or bathe. Don't put on oil. So the Gemara says bathing is the same as is included in putting on oil. That's how they would bathe. But that at least like I think the babies sometimes like they wash them also in the bath. They put on like baby oil and different things. So that's the way they would do it. What about someone that's ostracized? Is he allowed to bathe? When we spoke about the fast days, we said that when we say that with those by the fast days they weren't supposed to bathe, that's only the entire body, but they're allowed to wash their face and hands and feet. And the same thing we find by the ostracized in the mourner. My lavakula must be talking about all the details, including the bathing. Gemara says la yashar. It's talking about the other things. We're going to do this. That we have a comparison to the fast days, the same way that they behave theirs, how they're also behaving by a mourner and someone that's ostracized. We think that that's every single detail. The Gemara says not necessarily. What about a leper? Is he allowed to bathe? The Gemara says take it. We don't have an answer for that. And again, if you don't have an answer, it means that he would be allowed to. If they had Google, would they? Oh, there'd be no taker, yeah. Yeah.
Mashiach.
Yeah. Aval aser b'neilas sandal. A mourner is not allowed to wear shoes. Midakamle Rachman Yecheskel v'nalcha tosim baraglecha. Because Hashem tells Yecheskel that when he was mourning, it says he should wear shoes. That means mechlal dekuli almas. That for everyone else it's aser. This is the pattern that we had the whole time. Is that it's always the opposite. What about someone that's ostracized? Is he allowed to wear shoes? Rabbi Yosef says, when they said that you're not allowed to wear shoes on a fast day, on the public fast, they weren't supposed to wear shoes. That was only in the city. But on the road, you are allowed to wear shoes. Okay, it said, how do you do this? When you put out, when you're on the way out, you put on the shoes. When you enter the city, you take them off. Yeah, for us on a regular fast day, we wear shoes, but on Tisha B'Av, we don't wear shoes. That's so on a serious fast day, you don't wear shoes. So must be, it says, so too you find by someone that's ostracized and mourner. My lavakulu must be talking about everything. It's talking about only the other details. The comparison is not a perfect comparison. It's in general the mood. What about the leper? Does he wear shoes? Or it says take him? We don't have an answer. A mourner can't have relations, marital relations. Because it says that David comforted Bathsheba, and then afterwards he lived with her. They had their first child passed away, and she was mourning. And after the mourning period, so then he lived with her. That Mechlal de Mikar Asa, that means originally it was Asa. It was forbidden to have relations. What about someone that's ostracized? Is he allowed to have relations? Rav Yosef Tashema, Rav Yosef says, I have a proof. It says, after the spies, the sin of the spies, the Jewish people were considered like ostracized. Hashem didn't speak to Moshe right away. But nevertheless, they had relations. They had a whole another generation. The kill. They were ostracized from heaven. Maybe that's much more lenient than being ostracized from the court. Gemara says, 1 second. Kill, more lenient. You turn the page back, you said that that's being more strict. You ostracized. You can't, like, you're pulling the card both ways. You can't do this. It says no. He actually doesn't know. Abaya doesn't know which one is worse. So what he's doing is he's just saying that which whatever you tell me, I'm just going to respond that it's not compelling either way, because maybe it's the opposite, right? Maybe it's the opposite. Okay. Is a leper allowed to have relations? We had a Gemara before about this. The Gemara over here sort of takes one side. Tashema. The Tanya was taught in the Bryce of Yashem that he sits outside the tent. He's like a menuda, someone that's ostracized, which we actually didn't have an answer for. And he's like a mourner, and he's forbidden to have relations. What does it mean? He sits outside the tent. That means he can't have relations. After the giving of the Torah, they were allowed to return to their tents, and to go back to their wives. Shmamina is very clear that a leper doesn't have relations.
Is that because it's an issue on the leper, or that he should not be the top?
No, he would make her tamei, but that doesn't mean making tamei doesn't mean that it's asa. Yeah. It says clearly that he's like someone that's ostracized. I'm Rav Huna Breder of Pinchas Mishmeder of Yosef. Before it wasn't Rav Huna, before it was Rav Acha. Rav Acha Breder of Pinchas. Yeah, it's interesting. The text is not exact. Rav Acha Bar Pinchas Mishmeder of Yosef. Here it's Rav Huna. Yeah, interesting. Miktani she'aser sheyek menuda. Does it say that it's forbidden like the menuda? Uka'aval b'milei acharnisa. Miktani she'aser sheyek menuda ka'aval b'milei acharnisa. Does it say that it's aser? It just says that he's like the menuda and the aval in other matters. Vasanami b'tash mishamita, and he's also forbidden to have relations. It's not a proof that the comparison is in having relations, that the one that's ostracized is the same. Okay, let's leave it right here by the Avalena Mishlech Kabbanis. Okay. Okay, have a good Shabbos, everyone. Shabbos Mevarchim.